Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video we are going to learn how to set up an engraving and maybe a cutout, whatever design you want to engrave on the top of your box. So you only need the top of your box. I'm going to set the other part aside. You're going to need a ruler that measures in inches, and what you're going to do is you're going to measure and write down the dimensions of this. You might remember it. You're going to measure from the very outside of the fingers. So my width is 8 inches. I'm going to write that down so that I remember. So width equals 8 inches, and then I'll measure the height. If I remember correctly, it's 3.5, but it's been a while, so I'm going to check. Yep, 3.5. Which later on in Adobe Illustrator I'm going to need to put in as a decimal, which is 3.5. So I'm going to remember these. I'm going to switch over to Adobe Illustrator and I'm going to set this up to engrave just the lid here. I'm going to open up Adobe Illustrator on my iPad. I'm going to create a new document, hit create new. I'm going to give it a name first so I know that it's me. We'll just call it Joel G Box Top. We're going to set our units to inches. This is a little different than what you did before. We're going to put in the dimensions for the size of the entire laser bed. That's the entire cutting area, which is 24 inches in width and 12 inches high. It's a little different than what you did the last time. Color mode should be RGB, and then I'm going to hit create file. Alright, so you could flashed up there was actually what I'm going to make right now. We're going to put our design in the top left corner of the artboard because that's where we're going to place the wood in the laser engraver. I'll start by just making a rectangle. So my box top is a rectangle. You can see the width and height show up there, but I'm actually going to type those in to be exactly what I measured with my ruler a little bit ago. So I'm going to go back to that. So if you remember, yours is different. Mine, the width was 8 and the height was 3.5. I wrote that down on a piece of paper. I'm going to need that right now. I'm going to go into the properties over on the right, and you'll notice that when I have that rectangle selected, it gives me some options here to actually type in exactly the amount of the width and the height, mine being 8 in width and 3.5 in height. Yours, of course, is different. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to position that in the top right corner. Here's a little trick. These arrows that let you nudge, if you hold that down, actually you have to move it right away. It's a little bit easier to do that, to move it exactly where you want it, and it should snap right into the corner, and that's important that you get it exactly into that corner. I'm going to do that again, and you don't really need to look at the change in X and change in Y there. Alright, so that's where I'm going to place that piece of wood in the laser engraver. I'm going to set some fill and stroke on this so that the laser engraver ignores it, so it's not going to cut anything out. I'm going to change the fill to nothing, so hit that slash, and I'm going to change the stroke to this green color, and I have the laser engraver set up to ignore that. I hit the wrong button. Green, where's my swatches? Let's go back. That's the one I want. And the RGB settings should be red at 0, green at 255, and blue at 0. And the laser engraver will ignore that. That's just for us to know the size of the piece of wood that we're going to engrave. Alright, so now that all that's set, I'm just going to leave that alone. And I'm going to now add my graphics and text that I want to do. I am going to do some text. I'm going to draw it down here, and then I'm going to move it into place so I'm not getting mixed up with the box that's already there. I'm going to actually engrave the word box because I couldn't think of anything else, not being very original. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to change the font here by going into properties, and the font that I'm going to choose, I already searched this up, as a stencil font. The reason I'm choosing a stencil font is that when you do a cutout, the stencil font has connectors like you can see in the middle of the O. I'm going to make this bigger. I know there's another way to do this, but I'll just do that so you can see it. You can, I'm going to undo that, of course. You can see that there are, like the white part connects in the middle of the O, so that oval part in the middle of O doesn't fall out. So if you're going to cut out letters, you want to make sure that you are using a stencil font. If you're doing engraving, you can do whatever font you want. I'm going to position this, make this a little bit bigger, try to center that as best I can. I think it looks good right about there. All right, right now it's black. That'll engrave, which I think would look fine, but I'm going to do a cutout here, so I have to set that up by changing the colors on this. I'm going to scroll down. I don't want any fill, so that's going to make that transparent or white. It looks like it went away, and that's because the fill and stroke are both set at nothing. But I want to cut this out, so I'm going to turn the red RGB all the way up. Remember, red cuts on the laser engraver. But the other thing that you need to set is the stroke size. Oops, messed that up. There we go. Put that back. Be careful where I click here. Turn that color wheel off. Let's see if I can get back. There we go. All right, so the other thing I need to set is the stroke weight, which should be set to 0.001 inches or 0.072 pt. Now my units are set in inches right now, but it should look something like that. That's going to cut that part out. I'm also going to add an engraving. For an engraving, it can be any black and white silhouette image. I'm going to put a frog on mine, so I already searched up ahead on Google Images. This doesn't have to be a vector graphic for the cutout. If you want to do a cutout graphic just like you did in a previous project, then you need to make sure you use a vector graphic. There we go. Add to photos. Notice there is a watermark on that, but for the engraving, that probably will work. We'll find out here in a minute. Sometimes the watermarks don't work great. It might not work great. I'm going to hold down that. I actually will fix that on the computer when I get there. All right, notice it's in front of the box part. What we want to do is put it behind everything. So we're going to hit this layer button and we're going to move it behind. So we're going to move it down a layer. And I'm going to position it about where I want it and change the size. Hold down that circle so that it stays the right size. All right, so this is my frog box. So that's where I'm going to probably keep my frogs. Don't worry, I don't actually have frogs or keep frogs in here. I'll position it where I want. So this looks like it's ready to go. It's going to engrave that frog. It's going to cut out the BOX, so I'm going to have my frog box. It's all ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and download this as an Adobe Illustrator file by selecting the Export, Publish and Export. I'm going to keep it at AI, stands for Adobe Illustrator. It's going to export, and I'm going to save it to Files. And now it's ready for me to upload using Google Drive to the shared folder.